History is full of rich connections to God and the great outdoors He created for us. I'm on a mission to fellowship with other fathers as we introduce our sons and daughters to the beauty and bounty of the world where we are blessed to walk with our Heavenly Father in His garden. My name is Jacob Whitley, and this is Fathers and the Great Outdoors. Welcome back to Fathers in the Great Outdoors. Thank you for supporting this program. Make sure to subscribe, and you can also check out more content at our website, greatoutdoorspodcast.com. Today we have Josh Becker. How you doing?
Good. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. Thanks for coming on.
And no problem at all.
So I always like to just jump into it, kind of go into how you personally got started in the great outdoors.
Okay. Well, I grew up in Northern California, just up in the foothills. My dad was an avid hunter, not so much fisherman. So at an early age, he had me walking around hunting with him. And, ever since then, I've just been hooked. Now I live in North Carolina. I fish more than I hunt because it's harder to get hunting land out here, that for private. And I'm not a big public land guy. It's just stressful getting on a piece of land that, and then having other hunters walking through where you got a blind setup or something. So I've all but abandoned hunting for the most part. I did a little bit in Oklahoma when I was out there.
Yeah.
But so I'm a big fisherman. I'm always fishing. I live like 5 minutes from the boat ramp. So
was that private land then when you were in California?
Yeah. So I grew up in a rock quarry. My dad was a caretaker for the rock quarry, and there was 80 acres that we sat on, plus 400 or 500 acres that we kind of had usage of as well.
Yeah, it's kind of funny you mention that. I'm originally from California. I actually moved out to North Carolina about 2 years ago. So most of what I've been used to, well, actually that's not true. I was going to say most of what I've been used to is public land in California, but all my big game out there was actually private. But I did a lot of turkey hunting, or searching for turkey, I should say, and found a lot of nothing on public land out there.
We're at in California.
I lived in Orange County, southern
Okay.
California by Disneyland.
All right. Yeah, I lived in Escondido for a couple of years,
Yeah.
just south of Temecula.
What made you move out of state?
So my wife's still active duty.
Hmm.
She'll be at 18 years in September. And but I once you leave California, you just see how different everything is. I moved to Oklahoma first, and then I moved to North Carolina, back to Oklahoma, back to here again. And once I left the first time, I was like, I don't think I'll ever go back to California, just between the rigmarole politics and the increased cost of housing compared to everywhere else.
Yeah. It's definitely just the different lifestyle. I feel like it's been a blessing being out here compared to what I was used to.
Yeah, got to get
Uh,
used to the humidity though, right?
yeah, although that's never really bothered me because I've always had family. Like I grew up going to Kentucky during the summers for family trips. So I was, I guess, aware of it. And even then, it didn't really bother me. Obviously, living in it is a different story because I have to maintain my air conditioning unit and make sure that the house doesn't go through too much humidity because I have had some closets with mold on coats and stuff.
Oh man.
Um, um, so you had looks like you wrote down that you're a Marine vet. Are you still active?
No, I'm not. My wife is. I've been out since 2009.
Okay.
But yeah, now at this current state in my life, I have a 3.5-year-old and a 9-month-old, and I just chose to be a stay-at-home dad. So
Throughout the travel, since it sounds like you're focused more on fishing, have you noticed a certain aspect of um, preference and just kind of, I guess, diversity going from one coast to the other?
um what's great about where I've been is it's been kind of extreme. So I started out in California, and I was a trout fisherman. I was primarily trout because I was in the foothills where the trout thrive. Sometimes, there's German browns that they haven't planted 100 years that still live in these rivers and streams. And, like I was really big into that. And then when I moved to Southern California, I tried to get into, I did spear fishing for a little bit. Couldn't really get into that.
Yeah.
I have to be in a boat or on the shore. And so then when I moved to Oklahoma, it turned into bass fishing, and then from that I really got hooked in it. I got a boat, I got bait casters, and I moved out here, and then I fell in love with the ocean, and I don't think I want to leave the ocean.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do, what was your um did you have enough experience with the Pacific to notice a distinct difference between that and the Atlantic?
Yeah, yeah. We used to every once a year at least we'd go to a place called Bodega Bay, which is about an hour north of San Francisco.
Hmm.
And a lot of times we take charters out of there. It's really exciting to fish out there because out here you go offshore and you kind of know what you're looking for, right? If you're bottom fishing 5 miles off, you're only going to catch a certain, like sea bass and a couple other things, and it maybe at a certain time of the year you'll catch some other stuff, but you bottom drop out there and you'll catch like 35 to 50 different varieties of rock bass, and occasional lingcod and a whole bunch of other stuff that could bite your hook. But out here, it's kind of like you kind of know there's about a handful of species. So
Yeah.
that was the biggest. That was the biggest difference. And not only that, it gets deeper a lot quicker out
Oh
there.
yeah. Which causes the well, I guess the water in general is cold because of that.
But
But I wonder if that has to do with the variety is it being colder, especially
so
up
yeah,
north
so
though.
the current comes from Alaska, where the
Hmm.
current over here comes from the equator. So there, cold water's being pushed down, hot water's being pushed up. That's why it's humid here, and it's temperate and on the West Coast.
Right. Have you noticed much of a size difference between the
And
fish?
um, no, well, obviously the sea bass are kind of small compared to the rockfish out there, but yeah, there's definitely some bigger, like bigger fish out here per se, like kings, and I haven't really heard too much in the over there about like going bluefin tuna. I'm sure they run out here, but out, off the East Coast, you hear about all the time. They got the TV show Wicked Tuna and whatnot.
Right.
So, but yeah, I guess there's probably bigger fish out here. It's just a different type of fishing.
Yeah. One of the things I learned, it was actually episode one of this podcast, funny enough, when I was interviewing a friend, that there's a big difference in mackerel between the Pacific side and the Atlantic side. Because when I told him that we just used it as bait on the Pacific, he's like, "Oh, I eat that." But I researched it and learned that there are very different types of mackerel.
Yes, they're smaller, I believe, right? Much,
There's well, yeah, and they can get larger. I from what I understand, they're far more. It's like it's like a dark meat, but they're far more oily, so it's not something that
right.
people like to eat on the Pacific. Although now that I've kind of learned that, I almost want to do like a maybe even like a little video on test tasting the Pacific mackerel, king, and there's one other one here. I'm blanking on the name.
Spanish.
Spanish. That's it, and just to kind of give it a little diversity since it's kind of was a learning factor for me, um, knowing that there's a variety of mackerel and some you eat, some you don't, kind of thing.
Yeah. And
um
there's different versions to, like even Australia has a different type of mackerel. They call theirs king mackerel too, I believe,
uh-huh.
but it's different than our king mackerel out here. They're probably similar, I assume, but yeah, I would assume there's quite a few species of mackerel for sure.
Interesting. Maybe I'll have to do a documentary on mackerel. So kind of circling back, how did your kids get introduced into the outdoors?
So, like I'm a newer father, I don't know how many people you've had on your podcast, but I'm sure there's been some, that probably have full grown adult children at this
Right.
point in their life. But with me, it's like as soon as he could walk, my passion is to be out in the water. And as soon as he could walk, I threw a life vest on him because, mom goes to work. I'm like, come on, buddy, we're going fishing, so I'll load up the diaper bag and, we'll get out on the boat and, I'm obviously bring sunscreen and shade and everything I need to, to make sure that a child's taken care of. And And you got to remember, I'm not going offshore with my kids. I'm not going to do anything dangerous like that. Like he's 3.5 now. Like I can take him offshore if it's really calm. But if it's, usually I'm just going like, inshore to the bridge, do some trout fishing, do some red fishing, some flounder fishing, and his first fish that he caught was with me, assisted with me. He was probably about just over one. We went home camping up to a place called Markleyville, which is on the border of Nevada and California. I went home to see my family,
Okay.
caught a little planter trout, and he let him help me reel it in. And since then, he actually caught his first unassisted sea bass a few months back. We were just messing around offshore and dropped down, and he dropped down on his own because you don't want to put a hook on. He's still kind of in that stage where I don't want to hook in my back or in my shoulder because he still kind of whips it around. So if I'm here assisting with him, I drop it down, and he caught his first sea bass. He caught two or three of them that day, and even one keeper. So I was proud of him. I showed all the pictures to all my family and friends, and I was one proud dad.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I remember one of the last times I took my he was actually this was about 2 years ago, so he would have been I think just turned 5. And we were catch the deckhands on a charter we were on. We're helping him catch fish, so he ended up getting the most. And we're putting them in the ice chest. And afterwards, we're like, "All right, we're gonna fillet them." And he's like, "Oh, I wanted to put them in a fish tank." And I'm like, "Buddy, I think they're all dead." And he ended up reaching in. He had caught one rockfish, and he grabs it. And he's holding it, and I'm like, "Okay, well, he's already holding it. I'm gonna let him keep holding it." And then I notice it starts thawing and moving, and I'm like, "I'm gonna take that from you, buddy." Yeah, it's fun. It's fun watching their kind of innocence
Yeah.
in getting to explore all that. Um, have you done any camping out here in North Carolina for fishing?
I have a fifth wheel, so I kind of glamp. It's glamour camping,
Yeah.
and there's a place up towards Duplin called Cabin Lake. We went there this I don't know, last month, no, 2 months, in the beginning of April, and we went up there. The bass were still kind of on bed, so I some guy gave me like 80 minnows. Took my
Mhm.
son out on Cabin Lake, and we were just throwing minnows out. We were catching. I have the forward facing sonar on the front of my boat,
Mhm.
and I was just finding where the crappie, just the balls of crappie, and we were just throwing right over there, just pulling them in one right after another. Everything was going good until we ran out of minnows, and they don't like worms that much apparently.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, but I have that a 38-foot camper, and yeah, it's not the same as taking them in a tent. I got my tent out, and I told my wife, I was like, when they both get big enough, I want to go up into the mountains. I understand, like I could kind of do it now. I understand it's still kind of ravaged from the last hurricane season.
Right.
There's a lot of areas up there that they're still pretty cut off to the rest of the world. So in the next year or two, I'm gonna, me and the boys are gonna go up, and it's just gonna be a dude trip. So that's definitely something on my bucket list for him.
Was the California camping on a in a camper?
We were in a tent, but my dad brought his fifth wheel, but we were sleeping in a tent that my buddy brought with us.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah,
So
he's been in a tent before.
right. Okay. Very cool. So, and is that the preferred area that you guys like to go in the North Carolina area?
It just depends. Sometimes we kind of go everywhere. Like I don't know if you know where Fort Fisher is down
Yeah.
towards Wilmington. There's a military campsite there, and it's not it's nice and cheap, and it's right there. They got a boat launch, and it's there's decent fishing, and that you can get out of the inlet right there. I haven't done it yet, but I was thinking about going there. My birthday's next month, so I was like, maybe my wife started taking a week off. I was like, might as well pack a camper up and head down there.
Yeah. Well, happy early birthday.
Thank you.
You ever see anybody? Well, okay. Before I get to that, did you say what type of boat you had?
It's a Tracker Pro Guide, which is it's kind of like the big water boat that you see up in the Great Lakes a lot. It's
Hmm.
it's a little on the smaller side. It's 17 foot 10, so it's a little on the smaller side to go offshore. when I go offshore, it's never no more than like 10 miles,
Right.
because if how it is getting offshore, it can start to get choppy really quick, and I don't want to be stuck out there with with taking stuff bow, waves over the bow. So I'm very careful when I do take it offshore.
Right. You ever try the intercoastal?
Yeah, yeah, that's usually in the winter, and when it's just or when it's too hot and I don't want to go, I don't want to go get lost offshore. I'll go inshore, and I do a lot of trout fishing. I love redfish, and redfishing is my jam. But I don't know. It's just my boat has got 14 inches of draft, so it's hard to get up in some of those red creeks that I used to
Mm.
be able to get up into. Because I used to have a little bass boat before that that couldn't go offshore, but it could get up there, and I get up in where those reds were.
I wonder if that's something like a fishing kayak would be beneficial in.
Yeah, yeah. So I go up towards it's about north of here. I live just south of Camp Lejeune. But Browns Inlet, there's a lot of estuaries up there from here to Swansboro, and I like getting up in those estuaries. And a kayak would be great, but man, there's to find a place to launch your kayak to get into those estuaries is it would be quite the paddle.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
to kind of go because there's no. Is it like a drop or there's just no direct access?
yeah, no direct access. A lot of the places on base they have lock gates and whatnot. They do have like there's Freeman Creek there, which you could go, but some of my favorite spots are still quite a bit north of there. It'd be, I do have a small kayak, but I don't. Man, when the current flips on you, it gets ripping, and unless you had some kind of trolling motor to assist you when you're pedaling or paddling in or out, you're gonna be struggling to get in.
Gotcha. Is that are those the kind of spots that might actually be good for snorkeling, or is it you think it's still fairly murky there?
Yeah, no,
Atlantic murky.
so yeah, it's the water's quite murky here, especially inshore.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if it was deep, I don't, yeah, I don't know, like so there's a bridge here on Onslow Beach where the military access is for the military beach pretty much, and they're putting in a second bridge because they're trying to decommission the old one. It was built probably back in the 50s. So there's currently two structures there, and the fishing has been phenomenal there the past couple of years. But the completion should be this month or within the next couple months if they're a little behind. And then they'll start tearing the old bridge down, and then we'll be back to one structure. But until that happens, there's double the structure, which is just attracting trout, redfish, you name it.
Oh, okay.
Tr- Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Do you do any pier fishing?
No, no, I have in the past. I've went down to CVU Pier, but when you got a boat, a lot of times, you're just like, well, I have a boat, I guess if it's really windy and they were running, like the Spanish are running or the Bonito are running, you could be like go out to the pier. But I prefer just if I want to go offshore, if I want to fish in the ocean, I'll either fish from the beach or I'll fish from go take my boat out.
Yeah.
And there's really no, and there used to be a pier on base as well, but like Hurricane Fran or something like in the early 90s destroyed it. So and then they didn't rebuild it.
Is that the one with like the ghost pylons where you just don't have the planks?
No, there's nothing left of it.
Nothing there.
You would only reason I knew it was there because I was reading an article. I just stumbled across it one day.
Okay. All right. Well, to transition a little bit, where would you say you see God in the great outdoors?
Um, so I don't currently practice my religion. I have gone, I did used to go to church, on a weekly basis back when I was growing up. And recently I've just been, we've moved so much and finding a church was a little bit difficult, because your congregation, you get there and you become comfortable with them. And one of my things is I'm not a big fan of like making new friends. And I'm a little on the shy side, like when I first meet people. So
Sure.
I find church, switching churches because I move so much becoming difficult. But that doesn't mean that I don't see the splendor of God's creation. When I go out into I love going in the estuaries on a windy day where the wind's coming in up against the beach, and I'm on the other side, so it's actually I get a little break and it's nice and calm, but I can hear all the waves going, and it almost sounds like a sound bite from something you fall asleep to,
Yeah.
And I get out there and I don't even care if I catch fish those days because it's just so beautiful what he created.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think that's why a lot of people just go to the beach to nap.
Yeah. I can't do that though. I know people suck, but if I'm going to the beach, I'm bringing a rod, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. No, I have that personality type where if I go and just spend a day relaxing and I don't do anything of what I would consider productive, I have this weird sense of guilt about it. I'm not
Yeah.
really sure where that comes from. I mean, maybe it's a man thing. I don't know. What? So your kids are pretty young, but what would you say your kids' relationship with God is?
I don't particularly think they have one yet. Like I said, there's a 9-month-old and
Hmm.
3, and I do want to make sure that he has a relationship because you got to have a foundation built. You got to know, like pretty much the word of God, and you got to know you have to live and by his word. You have to go out and because being in church, Sunday school, and all that stuff growing up, I got to be mentored, and like once I got into the real world, I joined the Marines, I got out and everything. I feel like I had a pretty good grasp on you know on his beliefs, and how you should live life as a Christian.
Hmm.
But I definitely want to get him in. My wife's retiring in 2 years. We're going to take 1 year off. We're going to load up everything into storage. We're going to take the camper, and then we're going to spend 12 months. We're going to double back around here at the 12-month mark, and then we're going to set our roots. And then at that point, I'm going to make it a point to find a church that we both agree on, and we're going to start taking our children there so they can be blessed as well.
Yeah, that sounds like a fun plan.
Yeah.
Um, Might actually be this is entirely your trip, but you could see about popping in some places like church kind of stuff on the way. The only reason that comes to mind is I had a camping trip that I did when I was it was with a church youth group, and it was in the Grand Canyon, and it ended up the campsite got flooded from a rain, and we had to evacuate the campsite because the Grand Canyon basically everything just kind of came toward us, and we found ourselves going to a church on the top of the hill who basically let us stay in camp inside their auditorium. Um, I guess it's just the hospitality side of that that made me think of uh, just unique opportunities that could pop up at the very least create memories kind of thing.
Right. Absolutely. And to take that into account as well. And there's a lot of retreats that you can find as well when you get within the Christian community. I know a
Hmm.
lot of campsites are specifically made for Christians and like their congregations.
Yeah.
I think there was one down, we went down to Southport. I picked up like 5 trolling motors off of no, I'm sorry, downriggers, motorized downriggers, and we went down to Southport, and there's actually it was a Baptist retreat, I want to say, down there. I can't remember, it's Fort something. It started with a C, and we pulled up to the gate, and we kind of just they had a nice little turnaround, so you didn't have to go inside but it was a Baptist retreat for I couldn't tell you because I didn't do any research because I was driving, but yeah, there's things like that all around the United States.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. I wonder what specifically they provided something like that.
I I think I'm assuming it's just like that where people from the church can go and rent a house for the weekend, and there's probably tennis courts and whatnot. It was a pretty big compound
Oh,
pulling up
okay.
on it. So, but yeah, it was previously owned by the United States government. It was a fort back in probably pre-World War I or pre-World War II or something like that. But it was since sold off to a private entity, I would assume. But I was just like, well, that's pretty cool. Like, these, people from the church, they get to go and they have a weekend retreat and stuff and be at the beach and.
Yeah. I could have this wrong, but does Fort Fisher date back to the Civil War?
So I've camped there twice, but I just like, the first time I was actually coming back and we couldn't find an RV park,
Hmm.
in the area. So we ended up staying at Fort Fisher for 4 days. And then the first time we went down there, I went down there with my father and we just fished the whole week. So I've never actually done I never went and seen any of the stuff. I didn't even go to the aquarium that's there.
Yeah.
And literally I think the park is the RV park that I stayed at is literally like 3 miles from it. But yet, I just, like I said, when I go fishing, that's like my laser focus.
Yes. Yeah, I'm sure. Just go right up behind the aquarium, cast inshore, then you catch something like a whale or something.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Oops.
No, there's some good riffraff down there. So yeah, I would imagine there's some pretty good fishing.
Yeah, I remember. Let's see. I think the last time I went to the beach was the Fort Fisher one. That access point with the four-wheel drive vehicles, and the condos just north of that have that big. I think you could just call it a wave wall, and
Yeah.
they would just like crash again. Like you wouldn't want to try to swim around there. It would just pelting that wall there right below the houses or the condos. Um, but I guess if you were to sit on top of that wall, you might be able to find something interesting if you just start casting into it.
Yeah. Um, I remember there's a place called Sunset Cliffs down in San Diego. I don't
Hmm.
know if you ever fished down there. But I actually caught a spiny lobster
Mm,
and off the cliffs. But yeah, it's just something about the cliffs attract the fish. I don't know if it's the same out here, but um I always enjoyed because I lived in San Diego for 7 years before we moved to Escondido. So because I got out of the Marine Corps, I stayed down there where I met my wife. She was still in, so we stayed at MCRD San Diego, and then we ended up working our way slowly out this way.
yeah. So do you, with just kind of raising your kids in general, whether it be faith based or just goals for kind of showing them like the world and outdoor adventure and stuff, do you have any specific plans set out for your kids that you're hoping to achieve?
Um, Not really. My main objective was being a stay-at-home dad was to be able to make sure that my children got at least started and raised right.
Hmm.
Where I don't have to drop them off at a daycare and they get raised 8 hours a day by somebody else.
Right.
And so I wanted to make sure that my input was on there, and beyond that, I want to give them the opportunity to like, hey, I'm going to teach you. You want to learn how to fish? I will continuously teach you how to fish. If you want to hunt, I don't hunt at the moment, but I still have all my rifles and I have two compound bows upstairs that are just sitting in a box and tucked away. And I'll go get them restrung or make sure that the blades are good and whatnot. Um, if that's something that they want to do, if they want to go out shooting, I'd be more than welcome to teach them all this stuff. And maybe at one point when they start to get older, maybe that's something I need to do. Weapon safety is always important. You know, but for what I want to, I don't have any set criteria. It's kind of like take it day by day. But at the end of the day, I just want to raise two good children. That they're well behaved, well mannered. You
Yeah.
know, so.
You've touched on this a little bit, but I like to ask, what do you think is the significance of a father's role in teaching their kids about God?
Um, I think, that's something, like I said, I'm aware that it should, that has to happen, like, cause especially, my wife as well, like, we need to go and have this conversation with him sooner rather than later. Cause he's now 3.5. So he's gonna start to understand things. You teach him stuff, he repeats it, so he needs to understand that there is a God. He needs to understand that what he means to us, and how we have to live by his word. So just being on this podcast is really got me thinking like, hey man, maybe I'm behind the curve on this already, and I need to start making, we have to have start sit down conversations, and maybe that involves just picking up the Bible and just reading to him too a little bit, and it just explaining to him who God is and what He's done for us.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's like we have, I don't know, probably three different children's Bibles, and our kids have gotten to the point where that's one of the bedtime books they choose. Um, and they're like the one that we've been reading. I think we actually switched. There's one where the stories are extremely simplified, so it's like a small little paragraph, and it kind of jumps through major stories pretty quickly. The other one is a little bit more descriptive, and it has concepts that they probably don't understand, but it's not done graphically in a way that makes you uncomfortable for them to hear it. They probably will just have to reread it later to fully understand it, kind of a thing. Um, but I can't remember where I was going with that. Well, I guess one aspect is if you are able to find a church, the our church is been a great teaching point for our kids, and they've learned a lot. They come, especially with like the faith-based holidays like Easter and stuff. They come home talking about something significant about that holiday that you might not even have thought to tell them about, and they start asking questions or they're playing a game based on it. um it's interesting to see what they're able to soak up, um just I guess in any aspect.
Right. How old are your children?
My youngest is 1, and I have my daughter is 4, and my oldest son is 6.
Okay. So you got a pretty good spread going on right now.
Yeah.
You got one that's, more or less, could, pretty much, make themselves meal if they need to. And then you got one that's about where I'm at. You still change a diaper. So
Oh yeah. It
I
refers
just,
to everything as this. So
yeah,
he can somewhat communicate, but everything is this.
yeah,
But
yeah,
it's fun.
yeah. We just got ours out of, he pretty much potty trained. Thankfully, it took a little longer than, expected, but now he's pretty much good. He has an accident on occasion, but I'm like, all right, one down, one to go. We're gonna, me and my wife are stopping it too. And
Okay.
so yeah, like my biggest bane is having changed diapers. I am not a fan of it whatsoever. I thought it was going to be a lot worse, but I've changed hundreds of them now, and now I'm kind of now it's just like I don't breathe. I hold my nose. If I breathe, it's not through my nose, and
Yeah.
that's my secret superpower is being a stay-at-home dad.
I had my sister is about to give birth any day now to her first, and as a gift I gave my brother-in-law, it was just one of those like coveralls for when you go painting,
Hmm.
and I had it for a project that I was doing in the garage and never bothered using it, and I gave it to him and I relabeled it as diaper changing suit, and he
There
thought that was funny.
you go.
But
Yeah.
I mean, even 3 kids later, though, I'm still kind of the same way. I changed a poopy diaper in the morning, and then in the afternoon, my wife's like, "I think it's a poopy diaper. I think he needs another change. Can you do it?" And I'm like, "I already did one today." And she's like, "You did one today, so you're done." I'm like, "Yeah."
Yeah, no, it's 4 or 5 of them a day, depending. Some days mine's starting to regular out, he's starting to get to the point where he's just once or twice a day now. But
Hmm.
for a minute there, it was like 5 or 6 diapers a day. And I'm glad because now he's getting grabby hands. He's getting that grabby hand stage.
Oh,
So he's grabbing the diaper. So I have to give him a toy. Like,
yeah, little rattlers
take
or
this.
something.
Yeah, take this. Yeah, but he's got big brother toys and he loves those more than his own. So I'll grab him a little truck or something and hand that to him. And he'll be like, ooh, yeah.
Yeah,
Although he just started crawling last month. And so before then you give him something and then he'd be like over and over thrilled about it. Now it's like, oh, I could grab that anytime I want. I'm everywhere. So I was like, yeah.
right,
So it's lost its allure, Big Brother's toys, but it still helps. So he does, I don't have to, because one time he grabbed one and I got baby poo all over the changing station. I was like, oh my Lord. Yeah. I had to take him upstairs and literally give him like an instant bath because I was like, there's no cleaning this mess up.
Yep. I've had those. It's I think the worst one, my wife still likes to tell the story. It was with our first, and she was pumping while I was changing our son. And this was only a couple months in. And he ended up having a really loose stool just explode onto my hand while in the middle of changing. And my reaction was to scream like a little girl and do this to get my hand out of the way, which was too late at that point. So I ended up flinging stuff all over the room, and some of it ended up on her.
Oh,
Luckily, the moment was just so hysterical, we laughed it off. So it wasn't one of those like her getting angry and um me freaking out, which I guess I freaked out anyways, but in a different sense. But she basically had to get up and help me clean up the room, and I think I put him in the tub just to clean all that up, and
yeah.
that was a mess. And the funniest part is that I screamed like a little girl.
Yeah, I've had it happen enough to me now that I was changing his diaper, I threw it in the genie, and I look over and he's peeing all over himself. This was
Yeah.
just last week, and now all what I did was quick thinking is I grabbed another baby a wipe and I just threw it over him.
Hmm.
So at least it's not getting like up in the air and everywhere. So controlled madness, and I was able to take care of it. And I didn't, and at this point, I just picked him up, wiped him down best I could, and to the bathroom and take a bath.
Yeah.
Even though we were trying to leave, I was literally changing his diaper so we could go to the grocery store. I was like, oh, this is good. So I guess, nothing goes on schedule when you have an infant.
Right. Yeah. That's usually how it goes. I did. Going back to an earlier thought, that there was a trick I actually figured out the other day, because the going with the toys, um, in the car when we're going to like the store and stuff. Excuse me. He my youngest will take the whatever toys he's doing, sound makers and stuff, and then he'll shove them between the door and the car seat, so he can't get it and we can't get it, and he starts crying because he wants it.
Hmm.
And the other day he had a Big Brother toy, which was this big, I think it was a fire truck, and it had little buttons on the top to do different sounds. And he couldn't fit it behind between the door. So he has this giant thing on his lap that really shouldn't be there. But because he can't squeeze it down the door, it was perfect for the trip, for
There you
the
go.
car trip.
Yeah. Yeah, we always find toys in between because their two car seats are like this far apart from each
Yeah.
other. So everything falls down there. And oh, look, we found a sock that we couldn't find yet. We were out visiting a friend on Saturday. We lost a sock. We found it. We found it yesterday, a day later. She's
Hmm.
like, "Oh, here it is." I was like, "Yeah, go figure." But it's just it is what it is.
Yep. Lots of
Yeah.
fun stuff.
Yeah. One other thing I'll bring up is my son. You're asking me, how he gets in, like is he, into the fish or into sport, outdoor sports and whatnot.
Hmm.
And yeah, this kid, so I took a shower. I was out there working out in the garage, and so to get ready, I had to take a shower, and I put on I wanted to put on something that kind of resembles who I am as an outdoorsman. So I put on my fishing hat and I have my fishing my fishing shirt on. He said, "Daddy, we go fishing." He looks outside. "Daddy, it's too dark. We go fishing now?" And I was like, "No, man, we're not going fishing right now. I'm gonna be on a podcast in a little bit, and I just wanted to put something nice on, and instead of just having some everyday random shirt, that." So I was like, I just wanted to do a little something different. So he was all confused, and normally he sees me get this, and he'll go get his fishing rods. He's got like 4 or 5 of them. Just they're in his toy box, or they're upstairs or downstairs. They're not in the boat where they should be. Right?
Yeah.
They're everywhere out. I'll be out there working outside, and he'll just be throwing it. I have a lure without a hook on it, and he'll be out there throwing it, and people see him just driving by or when we're fishing, he'll just be casting. I'm like, "Man, your kid, how old is he?" And when he used to be 2, I was like, "He's only 2." And they're like, "He can cast that far and he's 2." I was like, "Yeah, I don't, I better watch out here. In a couple of years, he's going to be out fishing me." But he wakes up in the morning and he's, "Daddy, we go fishing?" "Not today, buddy. We got stuff to do." Daddy, can we go fishing tomorrow?" I was like, I don't know, the weather, because I only can, maybe once or, get out once a week or every other week. And if it was up to him, we'd be out there on the water like every day. Like
Yeah.
that's all this kid thinks about. I turn on the TV, "Dad, turn on fishing show." Because if I tell him no about cartoons, he's like, "Dad, turn on fishing show," and I'm like, "Okay, maybe we could watch that because, Daddy watched 4 hours of cartoons with you yesterday, or 2 hours, or however much it is." I try not to give him too much. I don't give him a tablet. He used to have a tablet, but we've since made it disappear.
Hmm.
I just, as a parent, I'm like, this thing is just too addicting. He was going backwards on potty training, and at that point, we were like, okay, no, this thing is not good for you. So if I have to get projects around the house done, it's cartoons or nothing at all. No more of this tablet thing. This thing is it's just too addicting to children.
Right.
So at least that's in my experience with my children. I don't know. Maybe other people have a better way. And I understand that tablets can have like learning software on it and whatnot, which is beneficial. But like at this rate, I had a bad experience so far. So I'm like, no more tablets.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of that has to do with the rate of um like image and color. There are specific TV shows that will avoid specifically because like my daughter will throw tantrums after turning that TV show off. Any other TV show for some reason doesn't have that issue. And I think it's like how quick they're switching between cuts and things like that cause the brain to go I can't think of the word. It's almost like how a cat reacts when you pet it too long.
Right.
Overstimulation. Um, so I think that's probably a lot of what the tablet's doing is overstimulation.
Right. I would tend to agree.
Yeah. Um, there was something I was going to say before that, but the casting, I think. I don't know.
Yeah, he's got a little tackle box too. Like he got one of our friends got it for him for Christmas, and he'll take it out, and we had to get rid of all the pointies, like all the hooks. If like has jig heads, we cut all the down
Mm,
to the barb, and there was egg weights, which we realized really quick, with the infant now getting into toddler stage and crawling around, like, yeah, that's maybe egg weights aren't such a great idea. The 3-year-old's not gonna, isn't putting everything in the mouth, but the 9-month-old definitely is. So
yeah.
we had to make some of his tackle box disappear momentarily until we put it in a little bag and we tucked it away with the rest of my gear. And when Connor gets out of that situation, like, you can have your stuff back now, but until then, it's been confiscated.
Yep. That's the sacrifice, and the kids they get used to it. Well, usually they just forget about it.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to forget about it altogether, especially if it's fishing related. But yeah,
Yeah.
I feel bad. I do feel bad. Like if I take something away and I take it away for too long, he's got magnetiles, and he wouldn't pick them up. So I was like, I picked them up. If Dad picks them up, I'm taking them away. And I forgot. Usually I just give him back the next day, but I tucked him away somewhere. It was like a week later. I was like, oh man, this is like his favorite thing to do is build on the floor. So he saw him and he's like, it was just like Christmas Day all over again. He sat down there for like 3 hours straight just playing with his magnetiles.
Hmm. That's fun.
Yeah.
Do you have any bucket list fishing trips?
Fishing trips. So I was able to go to Florida for the first time in October. I wanted to catch a snook. I did. I didn't catch a big snook, but
Hmm.
yeah, it was probably 16, 17 inches, which isn't very big. Snook get really long. They're really long and slender. But yeah, I would love to catch one of those. That's on my bucket list. Alligator garse, funny enough, was on my bucket list. I have caught some of those since then, but so I've kind of taken that off my bucket list. A golden trout. I want to catch a golden trout up in the mountains of California. I think there's only like 3 or 4 lakes in California that have golden trout, and I'd love to climb up one of those mountains. A lot of them you have to hike in, and I'd love to hike in and catch a golden trout. But yeah, I'd love to. Like Alaska's always been on my bucket list. I'd love to go up there and get on a
Yeah.
charter boat and just go hog on that. I don't care what it was, a big halibut. I've caught salmon when they run through California. I've done a salmon fishing trip. So but everything else up there I think would be phenomenal. Yeah, I don't know. Like I want to catch all the fish, like
Right.
I would love to go out. I still haven't caught a big king, like my biggest king was just 3 inches over the minimum. So it was only like a 5, 7, 8 pound king or something. So I'd love to catch a big king. Yeah, but yeah, there's just so much I would love to do, but like unfortunately, you know, the military and now raising these kids, it's that, these are the more important things. And, but yeah, I don't have per se one list thing. I think if there was one on top of it, it would definitely be wanting to go to Alaska and doing like a charter fishing trip up there, or an
Yeah.
excursion where I've seen somewhere they camp out, and every day you're just out onto the water, and then they even have a hunting trip mixed in with it. I think that would be killer.
Were you in the military where you were overseas with any opportunities to fish somewhere?
No, unfortunately, I wasn't. My whole duty station was spent at one, or my whole enlistment was at one duty station. So unfortunately, I did get to do a lot of fishing in San Diego, but beyond that, no, unfortunately, I just didn't get that chance.
Yeah. Well, San Diego's a good consolation.
Yeah, it's beautiful. A lot of trouble to get into, believe me. It's got all the beaches, and there's some nice piers down there. I did do quite a bit of fishing down there on some of those piers. They're like Imperial Beach Pier,
Hmm.
and a couple of other ones. There was one on base that we used to hang out. We used to sleep on it, and catch big old stingrays. Like 30, 40 pound stingrays, and yeah, it was a good time. I miss my old fishing buddies down there. But once y'all kind of get out of the Marine Corps military, everybody kind of like goes back home, and you kind of lose contact more or less with most of those guys.
Yeah, that's what I hear. Unless you happen to live in the same area.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. My uncle's actually caught some stingrays in lagoon in Florida, um, the Titusville area where the Kennedy
Mm,
Space Station is.
Yeah, that's where I was. That's where you know where Oak Hill is.
Sounds familiar.
It's just north. It's just north of Titusville,
Okay.
like 15th. That's where I was staying. Yeah, and yeah, so we drove through Titusville a couple times on our ways down to Rockville, Rock something. But yeah, yeah, the Mosquito Lagoon is I it's a really cool place, but at the same time it kind of sucks because they got speed limit because of the manatee down there.
Hmm.
So every time, like if you're driving in the intercoastal, it's like you're limited to like 5 miles an hour. So sometimes, like up here, you just whip up and down the intercoastal as fast as you like. There's no speed limit. And down there, you got to go 5 miles an hour for like 10, 15 mile stretches. Like, man, it'll take you forever. And a way to get around that is they don't have the speed limit to where the water's shallow because manatees can't get up there. So a lot of these boats get up into those shallows, and there is a speed limit. It's like 35 miles an hour. So a lot of them will get off of the intercoastal, and they'll drive up and around, and that's how they get to places quicker than the no wake speeds.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I'm
I
sorry,
understand that.
kind of
Oh, go ahead.
stole your thing when you're talking about your uncle. Would you
Oh
say
no,
your
you're good.
uncle? Yeah.
It's just that keeping the conversation going. That's all that matters.
Yeah.
I kind of understand the boat speeds though. I've seen what the like boat propellers can do to manatees. It's pretty
Yeah.
nasty.
Yeah, I met a couple manatees, not up too close because they don't like you messing with them. But yeah, they're not the most intelligible creatures, and they're not the most fat. They're not the fastest either. You got to
Mm-mm.
think of how big they are. They're probably 3, 4 foot wide out. For a big one, so it's probably pretty hard to get them moving. But
It'd
yeah, it's
basically be like if cows had no fences and could just wander onto the highway.
pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I don't think Floridians really care for them that much because they are kind of a nuisance.
Yeah, I hear that closes a lot of the freshwater springs at certain times of the year because they just kind of overtake them.
Yeah, yeah, and a lot of people leave their water trickling for them so they could drink because obviously they can't drink the salt water.
Hmm.
But did you hear like last year there was actually manatees in North Carolina?
Really?
Yeah, they won last year. Was it summer? I think it was early summer. Down by Wrightsville Beach, there was sightings of manatees on the intercoastal water. They must have got lost because they don't need to be. They're not used to being this far north. They're usually in like Florida, and I don't even know if they make their way up to South Carolina. But to be all the way up in North Carolina. and I don't know how long they were there, but we were fishing some docks, and they're like, "Did you see the manatees today?" I was like, "No," but we kept seeing these weird swirls in the water, which they very well might have been manatees that we were aiming at, because I don't know. I didn't see them, but they never surfaced. And like you were saying about snorkeling, the water's so murky in most of these places where I'm fishing, you don't have 2 foot of visibility to see if it, what the swirl is underwater.
Yeah. I want to say manatees like colder water, if I'm not mistaken. I wonder if there was just something like a current that was a little colder last year or something.
Not sure. I'm not sure. I know they stick around like tropical climates, like that's why they're only in Florida that I'm, aware of.
Right.
So, but maybe maybe they followed it up because it was too hot down there. You may be onto something. They're like, ooh, it's
Oh
not
yeah.
this water's a little bit nicer, just like the bonito. The bonito we're running through here, and I don't know. I probably have 30 pounds of bonito in my freezer, which should like it's kind of like a tuna. So it's good because trout season been closed, so it's like now one redfish can't catch trout, can't catch flounder, like you know I don't eat bluefish. I know that some people love eating bluefish, but I'm not one of those people. So I'm kind of limited on what I can catch. So it was a godsend that they came out and they were in full force this year. And I probably got to keep probably about 10 or 15 of them. I usually when I go out on my boat, if someone's fishing with me, we split up everything even, more or less, unless there's an odd number, then of course the guy with the boat gets the extra fish.
Hmm.
But yeah,
Yeah.
so I was thankful to go out there, and they're a good fighting fish. They're only here for they're only here for 2 to 3 weeks, but they're here for like a month and a half, almost 2 months now, and they're just now starting to leave the area. And they're pelagic. They head up and they follow the temperature, the thermocline, and once the water gets too warm up in the somewhere in mid 70s, they just keep moving north, and then they're out of here. And then we'll see them again next year. I don't even know if they come south in the winter. I don't know about it. I don't know if they all get eaten up, and or they spawn and they never come back. I don't know what their situation is, but I would love for them to stay here. Like in Florida, they're year round.
Hmm.
And I like everybody loves it because it's a pleasant surprise, and they come in such full force. And same thing with the Spanish do stick around in the summer, but there's just this onslaught when they're following all those big old menhaden or pogie balls, right? There's these schools of fish, and you can see them by these big black dark spots in the water, and you can find them by the birds, or if it's a calm enough day, you could just look out there half a mile and you could just see the change of color, a big black dot in the water. And you go over there, and we caught like a 4.5 and a 5 pound Spanish, which are really big Spanish. And then we caught like a couple of just last Thursday. We caught a couple, I think it's 3 or 4, bonito to kind of like top off the season.
Hmm.
And I knew that the weather was coming in today. It was like raining like cats and dogs. I don't know I assume you're in the Raleigh area.
Yeah. It was raining pretty good
Yeah,
today too.
yeah, it was just coming down like all day, to the point where I assume that my the gutter was clogged up because it was coming down so fast the water couldn't go down the rain gutter fast enough. So I need to get up there and check that out.
Mm.
And I was like, yeah, that's a lot of water if the rain gutter is completely getting filled up and then overflowing. So because the rain gutter is only 15 foot wide, and it's only there's only a small section of the house. It's just I don't know why it's even there, to be honest with you.
Yeah. I do you remember in California there being seasons like that out here as far as like the types of fish and stuff? Because maybe the type of fishing I didn't have a whole lot of that kind of variety, but it's definitely seemed like a new concept to me that there are seasons for a lot of different types of fish on the East Coast.
What kind of seasons do you mean? Do you mean seasons like they're only around, or seasons like the flounder season, which we can only fish from for 30 days a year at the
That
most?
Yeah, that one.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's a trout season in California. I don't know if you're aware of it. it doesn't apply to lakes, but in streams, it closes down in mid-December and it doesn't open up till like mid-April or beginning of April or something. So it's closed for a few months. I mean,
Okay.
so but it's different than out here. Like if something's clowner season's closed, you can still go fishing. Um, if it's closed out there, I want to say you're not supposed to fish at all. Like if it's a because all there is trout. Like there's no like a lot of these rivers, if there's
Right.
only trout, you're not supposed to fish it at all. From my
I want to,
understanding, I could be wrong.
yeah, but a lot of the places I went, do you know where Bishop is? Kind of, or Mount Whitney area.
No.
There's streams that come down from that area, and then they just basically end up in this desert area between two mountain ranges. But they would actually stock those creeks.
Okay.
It would all be certain times a year.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have gone up there. You said between December and April. That would have
Yeah.
been too cold anyways.
Some of them, like even they in Oklahoma, they'll stock creeks and ponds and stuff in the winter when they can survive. But trout have to have cold environment or they will die because I think it's a lack of oxygen or something. But when it gets over like 50, 60 degrees, the freshwater trout will start to die.
Hmm.
And they can't live in the warmer climates. I'm sure some will may persevere, but my dad used to stock his pond. He knew a friend, and one of the ponds that we had out at the property, they'd stock it with trout, like back in November, December when the water starts calming down. But by about May or June, the trout were gone. I never seen any floating on the water surface, and I don't maybe we caught them all out, but there was no holdovers of trout ever. My dad would just have to next year he'd have to plant it all over again.
Hmm.
But with seasons. It just there are they put regulations in on all the fish out there. I do know that like they close some areas off for overfishing in Southern California. I
They
know
did do
that,
that. Yeah,
you
like in
know,
Orange County, there was one
yeah,
area.
MLPA put in all kinds of regulations out there. I know, and some of it, like I said, that's another reason why I didn't like getting out there because it's political. I know there's a place, where Torrey Pines is,
Hmm.
the golf course. Well, that's La Jolla, and La Jolla has like they shut it all down. And it's not, and to my knowledge, they kept shutting it all down. So that's one of the reasons why I quit spearfishing because the only couple places they had they took away, and they say, well, it's overfishing, but I'm like, I think it's just because a bunch of rich people complained because people were parking in their neighborhoods, going down to the beach and with spear guns and going fishing, and they didn't like that. That was
Yeah.
just me as a fisherman seeing it this way. I was like, but you get to where there's no neighborhoods, and there's all of a sudden there's no more closures to where you can't fish anymore. It's just where all and it's just where all the houses were. So I mean, just take
Right.
that as take that with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Kind of
no,
same thing kind of happened down by us. And it definitely wasn't an absence of fish because it was my favorite snorkeling spot as well. And
hmm
you can't go a couple of feet without seeing huge fish just swimming in the kelp beds.
yeah, yeah. The loudest what is it? The squeaky wheel gets the grease, I
Yeah.
guess is they complain enough about it, and they did MLPA just so that was MLPA Marine Life Protection Agency or something. They just okay, we'll shut it down. Did you do any research? Did you go out there? Did you go snorkeling? Obviously you and I knew about it. We snorkeled. We saw there's plenty of fish there, but all of a sudden you guys are shutting it down.
Yep.
And I could understand. And there's a place down there that you can go down and snorkel, and it's a beach. And and there's sea turtles down there.
Hmm.
And I can understand you like shutting that small area down because you don't want hooks and stuff down where people, you don't want people fishing where people are literally snorkeling and seeing like a coral reef and whatever else is down there, and swimming with the turtles, and then some guys out there lobbing freaking 50-yard bombs with a 7-ounce weight. I could
Yeah.
I can understand a small area like that, 50, 100, a couple hundred yards being closed down, but not like 5 to 7 miles of fishing territory. That's absolutely ludicrous.
Yeah. It is a shame. I remember too. I was getting really into it. Bought a bunch of stuff for spearfishing, and then so a lot of that stuff started closing down. I'm like, I don't know where to go at this point.
Yeah. I just sold my weights last week. They were in my garage. They've been on Marketplace for literally I don't know, like 7 months.
Yeah.
I had one guy hit him up, so I knocked it down from $150 to 100. And some guy finally, it was within a few days. He's like, "Hey man, I'll pick him up." So I just sold him last week. So
Yeah.
that's probably the last of my gear because I sold the wetsuit 7 months ago. It sold like within a couple of weeks of being up on marketplace, but then he didn't want the weight, so the weight sat there. And I sold the spear guns last time I moved. So like six years ago, the first last time I moved out of North Carolina, I sold all. He asked me what I wanted him for, what I want for him. I told him I wanted 120. He lowballed me to 60. We met at 80, and I'm like, dude, like this one Mako was like $350 alone, and then it was like four spear guns. I was like, dude, there's like $1,000 of spear guns I'm letting go for like $80. But I'm like, again, like, what's the price? You're like, it's like I just want it out of my garage. I've been moving around with this stuff in my garage and packing and unpacking in boxes for like the past 10, 15 years. I don't, and I'm like, just get them out of my hair, please. So
Yeah.
it was sad, but out here, most people that spearfish out here, they go off a ways where the water's clear, and then they use oxygen. They use dive
Right.
tanks. So
I was
uh,
curious. I don't know if there's different rules about it. If there are places off of Florida on the Gulf side that would be good to go.
spearfishing.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, I'm sure of it. I'm sure of it. They got wrecks down there that, like the artificial reefs. I know
Hmm.
there's ships. I mean, there's a couple ships up here. And there's all kinds of like countless ships that the Nazis sunk out here. I don't know if you do some research, there's actual database that you can see all the sunken ships offshore. And it says a lot of them were sunk right around the time during World War II. So I'm sure that they were sunk by Nazi U-boats when they were trying to embargo us.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, there are some wrecks. Most of them are up towards like Morehead City and down by Wilmington. Unfortunately, where there's actually, this base has been here forever, so I'm sure the Nazis didn't want to, get the Marines too mad. And there's also not trade routes, in Onslow County.
Right.
So that's probably another reason why there's no shipwrecks around. But I would love to have a couple of shipwrecks closer to this area because it's a good haven for fish.
Right.
They have some train cars that they sunk there, but I have side imaging on my boat. When you go over the top of them, most of them just are collapsed piles of rubble now. And like there's a couple that are still intact, but most of them are just nothing more than a mound under the water now.
Right. I know there's one. It might be a little closer to Kerr, but sort of by the Fort Fisher beach area. It's not a huge boat by any means. But from what I understand, you could see part of it actually sticking out of the water. I think it's like I want to say 1 to 2 miles off the
Oh,
shore.
that's cool. That'd be cool to see.
I asked a dive guy about it though. He said that he knew exactly what I was talking about. He says it's way too murky to even bother uh, snorkeling around.
Yeah.
Um, but based on what you were saying about the reef aspect, I wonder if you could find decent fish around it.
Yeah. Now, normally, if there's structure out there, like as an offshore fisherman, like that's what I'm looking for. I got this app on my phone. It shows me 1 foot contours, and just because Onslow Bay is so big and the decline is the slope is so gradual,
Hmm.
you literally got to find those 2 and 3 foot contours, and that's where the fish are holding on. It's not like out in California where there's an underwater mountain, called like the Farlongs up in San Francisco area, where you go out there and you just fish an underwater island that comes up 500 foot off the bottom, the bottom of the seabed, and it goes up, it's like 100 foot underwater where it's just a fish haven. Out here, it's like you gotta know the small little nuances, like Divers Rock, but at the same time, Divers Rock is more or less of from what I've noticed, it's kind of a channel. It seems like an old lake, an old riverbed, an ancient riverbed from, back when the water was at least 50 foot lower. That's about what so it looks like it might be an old creek channel from hundreds of thousands of years ago.
Hmm.
And I only learned this recently when like I said, I got that app and it shows me the contours. So what I started doing, I started marking all the dots where the channel went, so I could take my boat, and I got autopilot on my boat, and I just kind of like, okay, go here and then go here to here, and then I'll just kind of just try to drive my boat right down the middle of it while trolling and hope for the best, you know.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Now the internet knows all your secrets.
Oh well. Yeah, I
uh,
mean, there's plenty of fish in the sea, huh?
yeah, there you go. Um, do you happen to have a favorite Bible verse?
No, not off the top of my head.
Okay.
Would you like to share me yours though?
I got a couple. Actually, I'm wearing a shirt that has one on it. It says, "He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul." Psalm 23, 2 through 3.
Okay.
One that I started really liking recently. I also ended up making a T-shirt for. It's another one from Psalm. I can look it up super quick. Or maybe not. It is Psalm 119, 105. Your word is the lamp to my feet and the light to my path. Um, and what really spoke out about that one to me is kind of looking at the journey God has for you as the light for the next step without showing you the destination, because He requires faith of you to not know what that destination is, but that it is uh, salvation. It's what's going to be um, the benefits in life that will project you to um, the fulfillment, happiness, and all that. And I think what's significant about that is, like, a lot of people pray, let me get this job, let me get this goal done. And instead of looking at it by help me do what I want to do, you're just opening yourself up to do what He wants to do. And your life will be better for it, kind of a thing.
Right.
So
I
that
totally
I think
understand it.
that's probably my current favorite one.
Okay. You know, my brother would probably be a little upset, that I didn't have one right off the top of my head as a favorite because he's actually a youth pastor in Idaho.
Yeah.
So that's a full-time job for him. So, he just got that. He actually just quit his job last year to do this full time. So he's been doing a lot towards youth outreach to bring in more people to the church and to the Word of God as well. And I think he's I would like to think he's doing a pretty good job at it. Because but I'm his brother, so I see a lot of his social media posts. But I do like how he's trying to reach the kids these days, at their level, because
Yeah.
like the way that I'll be 40, next month, and so like me speaking to like a teenager, it's going to be a little bit different. So like seeing him trying to take it, to bring it down to how they'll understand or how it'll be attracted to them. It's just I'm really proud to see how he's gone about it. So.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Does he have maybe in his position, maybe not, but is there any like sermon feed? Uh
Mm,
like my church like the main uh adult group, I guess, I don't know what you would call it. The main church, like, you can watch his sermons on YouTube, but in his situation, I'm guessing it's not
I'm not
recorded.
I'm not sure because his church is smaller. I
Yeah.
do, he lives in a smaller town up in Idaho. I do know that my wife's brother lives in Idaho, and when we were up there, they actually skipped out on church on the Sunday that we were there, but we did end up watching the sermon on the TV while we were just having breakfast or whatever that morning.
Hmm.
So they still got it in and it was live streamed. And they go to a much larger church, obviously. So
Yeah. Very cool. That's fun to hear. Um, that was pretty much it for my questions. Was there anything you were hoping to talk about?
No, I kind of like, I did ask you a couple questions in between, and I kind of, I did, anything that I wanted to talk about, about my child, I kind of like got that in there at
Yeah.
certain points. So, no, it's just that, I think you hit it right on the money though. With the questions that you asked, so I do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And if you ever have any fun stories that you want to share as your kids grow up, I'm happy to have you back on.
Yeah, absolutely. And like don't, if you want to come down or there's a decent weekend, you can always hit me up. I'm always down for someone to take out fishing if you like.
All right. That sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. All right. Have a good night.
Hey, you too.
Thank you for tuning in on greatoutdoorspodcast.com. And if you happen to be listening or watching on one of our social media platforms, you should check out greatoutdoorspodcast.com for some cool merch like this hat or this awesome coffee cup for camping. And this awesome sweater as well, which features our classic Genesis 27.3. Take your quiver and your bow and go hunt me some venison. Your wife's gonna love the way you look in this. Right, honey?
Uh-huh.
greatoutdoorspodcast.com.
Why?